Hi there, boys and girls. Welcome once again to Story Hour. My name is Carole Gooden, and I'm media specialist at Windmill Point Elementary School. Today our stories are all about winter. The first story is called Winter Days in the Big Woods, and it's by Laura Ingalls Wilder. Once upon a time, a little girl named Laura lived in the big woods of Wisconsin in a little house made of logs. Laura lived in the little house with her pa, her ma, her big sister Mary, her baby sister Carrie, and their good old bulldog, Jack. Winter was coming to the big woods. Soon the little house would be covered with snow. Pa went hunting every day so that they would have meat during the long, cold winter. Ma, Laura, and Mary gathered potatoes and carrots, beets and turnips, cabbages and onions, and peppers and pumpkins from the garden next to the little house. By the time winter came, the little house was full of good things to eat. Laura and Mary thought the attic was a lovely place to play. They played house by using the round orange pumpkins as tables and chairs, and everything was snug and cozy. Soon the first snow came, and it was very cold. In the mornings, the windows were covered with beautiful frost pictures of trees and flowers and fairies. Ma said that Jack Frost came in the night and made the pictures while everyone was asleep. Laura and Mary were allowed to use Ma's thimble to make pretty patterns of circles in the frost. In the mornings, Laura and Mary helped Ma wash the dishes and make the beds. After this was done, Ma began the work that belonged to that day. Each day had its own proper work, Ma would say. Wash on Monday, iron on Tuesday, mend on Wednesday, churn on Thursday, clean on Friday, bake on Saturday, rest on Sunday. Laura liked the churning and baking days best of all. Ma had to churn the cream for a long time until it turned into butter. Mary could sometimes churn while Ma rested, but Laura was too little. On Saturdays, when Ma made the bread, Laura and Mary each had a little piece of dough to make into a little loaf. Ma even gave them a bit of cookie dough to make little cookies. After the day's work was done, Ma would sometimes cut out paper dolls for Laura and Mary. She drew their faces on with a pencil and cut dresses, hats, and ribbons out of colored paper so that Mary and Laura could dress their dolls beautifully. But the best time of all was at night when Pa came home. He would throw off his fur cap and coat and mittens and call, "Where's my little half pint of sweet cider half drunk up?" That was Laura, because she was so small. Sometimes Pa would take down his fiddle and sing. Pa would keep time with his foot. Laura and Mary would clap their hands to the music when he sang, "Yankee Doodle went to town, he wore his striped trousers. He swore he couldn't see the town, there were so many houses." Other times, Pa would tell stories. When Laura and Mary begged him for a story, he would take them on his knees and tickle their faces with his long whiskers until they laughed out loud. His eyes were blue and merry. Outside it was cold and snowy, but the little log cabin was snug and cozy. Pa, Ma, Laura, Mary, and baby Carrie were comfortable and happy in their little house in the big woods. Winter Days in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder. Emmett's Snowball by Ned Miller, with pictures by Susan Guevara. One cold winter morning, Emmett woke up early. He didn't get out of bed. He just waited and listened. "I hope the whistle blows today," Emmett said to himself. When the town whistle blew, that meant snow. On snowy days, there was no school. The whistle blew. Emmett popped out of bed. He got dressed in a hurry and ran outside. The ground was white. The trees were white. The house was even whiter than before. The snow was almost a foot deep, but it was still very early. There was no one for Emmett to play with. Emmett made a snowball in his hands. He started to roll it around the yard. Soon the snowball was half as tall as Emmett, but it was getting heavy and hard to push, and almost all the snow in Emmett's yard was used up. Emmett's best friend Sarah came out of the house next door. "Hey," Sarah said, "pretty big snowball." "Come over and help me push it," Emmett said. Emmett and Sarah pushed the snowball through Sarah's front gate and into Sarah's yard. Soon the snowball was taller than Emmett. It was almost as tall as Sarah. "We could use more help," Sarah said. Just then, Sarah's older brother Craig came out. "Big snowball," Craig said. "We want to make it bigger," said Emmett, "but it's too heavy to move." "It's not too heavy for me," Craig said. Craig was always bragging. Emmett, Sarah, and Craig rolled the snowball out front again. It was almost too wide for the big double gate. "Let's take it to the park," Craig said. "We can get it really big there." By the time they got to the park, the snowball was as tall as Craig. They came to the top of a long hill. "Let's roll the snowball down the hill," said Emmett. "Great idea," said Craig. But Sarah looked worried. "What if it rolls too far?" Craig pointed. "See that big, strong wooden fence? That will stop the snowball for sure." "Yeah," said Emmett, "let's roll it." Sarah still looked worried, but she got behind the snowball with Emmett and Craig. They gave a push. The snowball wouldn't budge. "We need more help," Emmett said. "Here comes somebody," said Sarah. A tall boy in a bright green jacket was coming across the park. "He won't help us," Craig said. "That's Danny Campbell. He's in the 8th grade. He hates little kids." Danny Campbell walked up and put his hand on the snowball. He was trying to act cool, but Emmett could tell he was interested. "Pretty big snowball," Danny Campbell said. "Want to help us roll it down the hill?" Emmett asked. Danny Campbell thought about it a while. Then he said, "Okay." They all got behind the snowball and pushed. Emmett felt his feet slipping. Sarah, Craig, and Danny Campbell all fell down at the same time, right on top of Emmett. The snowball rolled away, down the hill, moving faster and faster. The snowball rolled right over the big, strong wooden fence. It kept going straight for the back of Mr. Wetzel's candy store. "No, no," Emmett said, "not the candy store." Mr. Wetzel looked out his back window. His round face turned white. His eyes opened wide. The snowball was rolling right at him. "He'll never let me buy M&Ms again," Emmett thought. "No more gummy bears, no more Bonomo's Turkish taffy." There was a loud noise. It sounded something like thump. The snowball stopped. Everything was quiet. After a moment, Mr. Wetzel came running up the hill. His face wasn't white anymore. It looked like a big, round, red M&M. Craig and Danny Campbell turned and ran. "Let's go," Sarah said to Emmett. But Emmett was too scared to move. When Mr. Wetzel got closer, he started yelling. He yelled and yelled. Sarah put her hands over her ears. "Your snowball is blocking my back door," Mr. Wetzel yelled. "How am I supposed to take out the garbage?" "We could move it," Emmett said. Mr. Wetzel stopped yelling. "What did you say?" he asked. "We could move the snowball," Emmett said. Mr. Wetzel looked back down the hill. After a moment, he said, "I suppose we could move it if we had help." Mr. Wetzel rounded up some people from the other stores on Main Street. They all got behind the snowball and pushed. Emmett and Sarah pushed too. Even Craig and Danny Campbell came back. They rolled the snowball away from Mr. Wetzel's door. Mr. Wetzel stopped traffic while they rolled it across Main Street. When they got to the town square, they decided to roll the snowball around a little more. By the time they stopped, it was twice as tall as a statue of President Millard Fillmore. "It's a world record for sure," said Craig. While they were all admiring the snowball, a man from the town newspaper came by. He asked Emmett and Sarah to stand in front of the snowball. Then he took their picture. But Danny Campbell stuck his hand in front of Emmett's face at the last second. The picture was in the paper the next day. After that, the snowball was famous. People came from all the nearby towns to look at it. Mr. Wetzel sold them lots of candy. The town even put up lights so everyone could see the snowball at night. Then people started to forget about the snowball. Soon the weather got warm. The snowball began to melt. Before long, it was down to President Millard Fillmore's eyebrows, then President Millard Fillmore's knees, then the platform that President Millard Fillmore was standing on. Finally, the snowball was so small that Emmett could scoop it up in his hands. Emmett took the snowball home and put it in the freezer. "Next time," he said, "I'll make it even bigger." Hope you enjoyed Emmett's Snowball by Ned Miller, with pictures by Susan Guevara. Our next story is The Tomten by Astrid Lindgren. It is the dead of night. The old farm lies fast asleep, and everyone inside the house is sleeping too. The farm is deep in the middle of the forest. Once upon a time, someone came here, cut down trees, built a homestead, and farmed the land. No one knows who. The stars are shining in the sky tonight. The snow lies white all around. The frost is cruel. On such a night, people creep into their small houses, wrap themselves up, and bank the fire on the hearth. Here is a lonely old farm where everyone is sleeping, all but one. The Tomten is awake. He lives in a corner of the hayloft and comes out at night when human beings are asleep. He is an old, old Tomten who has seen the snow of many hundreds of winters. No one knows when he came to the farm. No one has ever seen him, but they know he is there. Sometimes when they wake up, they see the prints of his feet in the snow. But no one has seen the Tomten. On small, silent feet, the Tomten moves about in the moonlight. He peeps into cowshed and stable, storehouse and toolshed. He goes between the buildings, making tracks in the snow. The Tomten goes first to the cowshed. The cows are dreaming that summer is here, and they are grazing in the fields. The Tomten talks to them in Tomten language, a silent little language that cows can understand. Winters come and winters go. Summers come and summers go. Soon you can graze in the fields. The moon is shining into the stable. There stands Dobbin, thinking. Perhaps he remembers a clover field where he trotted around last summer. The Tomten talks to him in Tomten language, a silent little language a horse can understand. Winters come and winters go. Summers come and summers go. Soon you will be in your clover field. Now all the sheep and lambs are sleeping soundly, but they bleat softly when the Tomten peeps in at the door. He talks to them in Tomten language, a silent little language the sheep can understand. All my sheep, all my lambs, the night is cold, but your wool is warm, and you have aspen leaves to eat. Then on small, silent feet, the Tomten goes to the chicken house, and the chickens cluck contentedly when he comes. He talks to them in Tomten language, a silent little language chickens can understand. Lay me an egg, my jolly chickens, and I will give you corn to eat. The dog kennel roof is white with snow, and inside is Carole. Every night he waits for the moment when the Tomten will come. The Tomten is his friend, and he talks to Carole in Tomten language, the silent little language a dog can understand. Carole, my friend, is it cold tonight? Are you cold in your kennel? I'll fetch more straw, and then you can sleep. The house where the people live is silent. They are sleeping through the winter night without knowing that the Tomten is there. Winters come and winters go. I have seen people large and small, but never have they seen me, thinks the Tomten. He tiptoes across to the children's cot and stands looking for a long time. If they would only wake up, then I could talk to them in Tomten language, a silent little language children can understand. But children sleep at night, and away goes the Tomten on his little feet. In the morning, the children see his tracks, a line of tiny footprints in the snow. Then the Tomten goes back to his cozy little corner in the hayloft. There in the hay, the cat is waiting for him, for she wants milk. The Tomten talks to the cat in Tomten language, a silent little language a cat can understand. Of course you may stay with me, and of course I will give you milk, says the Tomten. Winter is long and dark and cold, and sometimes the Tomten dreams of summer. Winters come and winters go. Summers come and summers go. Soon the swallows will be here, thinks the Tomten. But the snow still lies in deep drifts around the old farm in the forest. The stars shine in the sky. It is biting cold. On such a night, people creep into their small houses and bank the fire on the hearth. Here is a lonely old farm where everyone is fast asleep, all but one. Winters come and summers go. Year follows year. But as long as people live at the old farm in the forest, every night the Tomten will trip around between the houses on his small, silent feet. The Tomten by Astrid Lindgren. Sadie and the Snowman by Alan Morgan, illustrated by Brenda Clark. One cold winter day, Sadie made a snowman in her backyard. First she made a snowball, and then she made 2 more. Then she rolled them and rolled them until they were done. She used cookies for the eyes, an apple for the nose, and a great big banana for the smile. He was a really good snowman, and he lasted for a long time. But some birds ate the cookies, a squirrel ate the apple, and a large raccoon stole the banana. The sun came out and the snowman began to melt. After a while, he didn't look much like a snowman at all. Sadie was sad. She missed the snowman. So the next time it snowed, she made the snowman all over again. There was still a bit of the snowman left, so she made it into a snowball. Then she made 2 more, and she rolled them and rolled them until they were done. She used crackers for the eyes, a carrot for the nose, and a nice fat zucchini for the smile. He was a really good snowman, and he lasted for a long time. But the birds ate the crackers, the squirrel ate the carrot, and a large raccoon stole the zucchini. The sun came out and the snowman began to melt. After a while, he didn't look much like a snowman at all. This time, Sadie wasn't sad. She knew it would snow again. All that winter, Sadie made the snowman over and over again. The birds ate the eyes, the squirrel ate the noses, and a large raccoon stole all the smiles. The sun kept coming out, and the snowman kept melting, but there was always enough of the snowman left to start all over again. Then the weather turned warmer. The sun came out earlier, and it stayed out longer. Sadie worried about the snowman. She found an old blanket and made him a tent so he could hide from the sun. But the wind began to blow, and it blew and blew until finally one day the tent flew away. Spring was coming, and the snow on the ground was melting so fast that the grass grew through. The snowman was melting too. Sadie took him apart and moved him under the porch where the sun couldn't see him. But even so, he kept getting smaller. After a while, he didn't look much like a snowman at all. The weather turned colder again just in time. It snowed a little during the night, and in the morning, Sadie made the snowman again. There was still a bit of the snowman left, so she made it into a snowball. Then she made 2 more, and she rolled them and rolled them until they were done. She used raisins for the eyes, a peanut for the nose, and a twist of red licorice for the smile. When the snowman was finished, Sadie put him into a bowl and moved him back under the porch. He was a really good snowman, but Sadie wasn't sure how long he would last this time. The birds ate the raisins, the squirrel ate the peanut, and a large raccoon stole the licorice. The sun came out, and the weather turned warm again. This time the snowman melted down all the way, and all that was left was a bowl full of water. Sadie was sad. The really good snowman was gone now for good, and she knew she would miss him. Then Sadie smiled. She knew just what to do. She poured all the water out of the bowl and into a plastic bag. Then she put the plastic bag into her freezer. And for all that summer and all that fall, Sadie didn't miss the snowman at all. She knew she would see him again. So, when winter came and it snowed again, Sadie took the plastic bag from her freezer and went outside. First she made a snowball all around the ice she had saved. Then she made 2 more, and she rolled them until they were done. She used cookies for the eyes, an apple for the nose, and a great big banana for the smile. He was a really good snowman, and he lasted for a long time. Sadie and the Snowman by Alan Morgan, illustrated by Brenda Clark. Our next story was written by a 10-year-old, The Snowman Who Wanted to See July. The story is by Nicole B. Estvanik. There once was a snowman who wanted to see July. He should have been happy with his red scarf, his blue woolly mittens, and his big black top hat, but he longed to spy the butterflies hiding in the grass and to watch the flowers bloom. Every year he'd shout, "I want to stay alive, I want to see July." But each year he melted, and his raisin eyes were eaten by the birds. Every winter, when he was being built, he would call out to the little girl, "Help me, build me so that I can see July." But the little girl never seemed to hear him. Finally, one year, the snowman couldn't stand it any longer. "That does it. I will see July this year. I must," he declared. And true to his word, when the sun came out, he wouldn't melt. "Foolish snowman," called the sun, "I will shine in your eyes and make them fall out. Then you won't see July." But the little girl heard the sun and put sunglasses on the snowman, and his eyes stayed in. "Well," said the sun, "I will shine on your nose and it will shrink. Then your sunglasses won't stay on. Next, I will shine in your eyes and they will fall out and you won't see July." But the little girl put suntan lotion on the snowman's nose, and his nose didn't shrink. "Well," said the sun, "I will heat this storm cloud and make it rain. The lotion will wash off and your nose will shrink. Your sunglasses will fall off and your eyes will fall out, and you won't see July." But the little girl held an umbrella over the snowman, and his lotion didn't wash off. The sun told the rain to stop, hoping the umbrella would be taken down, but it wasn't. So the sun set to thinking very hard. Who ever heard of a snowman in July? Something had to be done. He called the wind. "Blow down that umbrella," he directed. The wind blew with all its might, but the little girl held the umbrella, and he could not blow it from her hands. So the sun and the wind waited for her to tire of holding the umbrella. They waited for hours, and so did she. Finally, she couldn't hold it any longer. The sun smiled, but the smile soon turned to a frown when the little girl's brother came out with a hammer. Together the children nailed the umbrella down and they went inside for dinner. All during dinner, the little girl kept looking out the window to make sure the snowman was all right. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about the snowman. Quietly, she got out of bed, tiptoed past her parents' bedroom, and ran down the stairs. Still wearing her slippers, the little girl slipped out into the dark night. She ran to the snowman and gave him a big kiss. "Good night," she whispered. She didn't see the snowman smile as she ran back into the house. The next morning was bright and cheery. The little girl and her brother ran down the stairs. They ate a quick breakfast. Then excitedly the two raced off to tell their friends about the marvelous snowman. They came back with a group of children who wanted to see it for themselves. They were quite surprised and pleased. "He's going to see July," the little girl said. "He'll be famous," cried one of the children. All of them edged closer to get a better look at the snowman. As they crowded around him, they began to joke and push. Suddenly, one of the children lost his balance and fell right into the snowman. The children cried in dismay as the snowman toppled to the ground and broke into 1,000,000 pieces. The little girl jumped forward, blinking back tears. She grabbed the snow and tried to put the snowman back together. Seeing his chance, the sun came out and shone in all his brightness. Slowly, the snow melted, leaving the raisin eyes to be eaten by the birds. The snowman was gone. The little girl's brother walked sadly away. Their friends left too, but one stayed behind and put her arm around the little girl. "You know," she said, "nature has a pattern that is very hard to break, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to try." The little girl thought, and she was right. Because of his ambition, the snowman had come closer to achieving his dream than ever before. The Snowman Who Wanted to See July. A story by Nicole B. Estvanik. Our next winter story won the Caldecott Medal Award. It is Owl Moon by Jane Yolen, illustrated by John Schoenherr. It was late one winter night, long past my bedtime, when Pa and I went owling. There was no wind. The trees stood still as giant statues, and the moon was so bright the sky seemed to shine. Somewhere behind us a train whistle blew, long and low like a sad, sad song. I could hear it through the woolen cap Pa had pulled down over my ears. A farm dog answered the train, and then a second dog joined in. They sang out trains and dogs for a real long time. And when their voices faded away, it was as quiet as a dream. We walked on toward the woods, Pa and I. Our feet crunched over the crisp snow, and little gray footprints followed us. Pa made a long shadow, but mine was short and round. I had to run after him every now and then to keep up, and my short, round shadow bumped after me. But I never called out. If you go owling, you have to be quiet. That's what Pa always says. I had been waiting to go owling with Pa for a long, long time. When we reached the line of pine trees, black and pointy against the sky, and Pa held up his hand, I stopped right where I was and waited. He looked up, as if searching the stars, as if reading a map up there. The moon made his face into a silver mask. Then he called, "Woo, woo, 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 woo," the sound of a great horned owl. "Woo, woo, 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 woo." Again he called out, and then again. After each call he was silent, and for a moment we both listened, but there was no answer. Pa shrugged, and I shrugged. I was not disappointed. My brothers all said sometimes there's an owl, and sometimes there isn't. We walked on. I could feel the cold as if someone's icy hand was palmed down on my back, and my nose and the tops of my cheeks felt cold and hot at the same time. But I never said a word. If you go owling, you have to be quiet and make your own heat. We went into the woods. The shadows were the blackest things I had ever seen. They stained the white snow. My mouth felt furry, for the scarf over it was wet and warm. I didn't ask what kinds of things hide behind black trees in the middle of the night. When you go owling, you have to be brave. Then we came to a clearing in the dark woods. The moon was high above us. It seemed to fit exactly over the center of the clearing, and the snow below it was whiter than the milk in a cereal bowl. I sighed, and Pa held up his hand at the sound. I put my mittens over the scarf, over my mouth, and listened hard. And then Pa called, "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo." I listened and looked so hard, my ears hurt, and my eyes got cloudy with the cold. Pa raised his face to call out again, but before he could open his mouth, an echo came threading its way through the trees. "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo." Pa almost smiled. Then he called back, "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo," just as if he and the owl were talking about supper, or about the woods, or the moon, or the cold. I took my mitten off the scarf, off my mouth, and I almost smiled too. The owl's call came closer, from high up in the trees on the edge of the meadow. Nothing in the meadow moved. All of a sudden, an owl shadow, part of the big tree shadow, lifted off and flew right over us. We watched silently, with heat in our mouths, the heat of all those words we had not spoken. The shadow hooted again. Pa turned on his big flashlight and caught the owl just as it was landing on a branch. For 1 minute, 3 minutes, maybe even 100 minutes, we stared at one another. Then the owl pumped its great wings and lifted off the branch like a shadow without a sound. It flew back into the forest. "Time to go home," Pa said to me. I knew then I could talk. I could even laugh out loud. But I was a shadow as we walked home. When you go owling, you don't need words, or warm, or anything but hope. That's what Pa says. The kind of hope that flies on silent wings under a shining owl moon. I hope you enjoyed that Caldecott Medal Award-winning book, Owl Moon, by Jane Yolen, with illustrations by John Schoenherr. Our next story is Island Winter by Charles E. Martin. It was a sad day. Fall had come, and the last of the summer people had left the island. Heather and her family stayed behind. "What will you do here all winter?" Heather's friends had asked her. It worried her. She asked her mother. "There'll be plenty to do," her mother said. "You'll see." Wide awake that night, Heather looked out on a dark, cold island. The inn was a black shape against the sky. A little light came from a pale moon. Her parents were sleeping. Finally, she went back to bed and slept until breakfast. "This is the day I start building traps and painting buoys," her father said, "and I'm going to need your help." "First things first," her mother said. School starts tomorrow, and we have to get ready for that. Afterward, we will give you lots of help." At school, there was one big room with 8 grades and 8 children. 3 in the 2nd grade, 1 in the 4th, 2 in the 1st, 1 in the 6th, and Heather was in the 3rd. The teacher was Mr. Gray. His helper was Mrs. Gray. School was fun. Still, she thought about summer, about berrying in the woods, the picnics on Swim Beach, the busy store, watching the baby seals, and her summer friends. That afternoon, Heather and Kate and Sam raced their bikes and played games until dinner. On Saturday at the firehouse, she and her friend Alta painted boys. Heather helped choose the colors. Father built traps and Mother brought sandwiches, and they had a picnic. The trees turned red and gold. Heather and the other children helped gather kindling in cathedral wood. Halloween came, and in art class they all worked on decorating the school for the Halloween party. At the party they dressed in crazy costumes, danced square dances, and ducked for apples. A big moon lit up the way home. Heather and Kate took piano lessons and practiced on the school piano. Grandma and Grandpa came on the mailboat for Thanksgiving. Grandma said she was seasick, but Grandpa said it wouldn't hurt her appetite for turkey. It didn't. Everybody ate too much. The next morning was bright and sunny. They all took a ride inshore with Grandma and Grandpa. The sea was very calm. For 3 days, school was closed. The teachers had colds along with 3 of the pupils. It snowed, and out came the skis and sleds and snowballs. When school started again, Mrs. Gray reminded them that Christmas was 2 weeks away. She read them a Christmas carol and asked if they would like to make a play out of it. They all said yes. She also asked them to think about decorating the classroom for Christmas. Heather's drawings were the best in the class, and Mrs. Gray chose her to do the blackboard decorations. Suddenly, the temperature dropped. The pond froze, and there was ice in the water bucket. Heather got one of her presents early, a pair of shoe skates. Everyone skated all weekend. She fell 160 times, but she learned how to skate. Back to school on Monday, play rehearsals, schoolwork, decorations, and just a little time to skate before dark. The play was a great success. Heather was Scrooge. The applause was long and loud. At night, the island was bright with lights in every window, and there was a wreath on every door. Everyone got presents. Towards evening on Christmas Day, a heavy snow started falling, and school was closed for a week. It was skis, snowmen, sleds, shovels, and snowball fights, and it all passed too quickly. New Year's Eve was a very quiet time on the island because very early on New Year's Day, lobstering began. At gray dawn, everybody came down to watch or to help the men set out the traps. By early evening, hundreds of different colored boys bobbed up and down in the wintry sea. Everyone was tired, and the lights went out very early. One warm day, Mr. Gray took them to Swim Beach to hunt for arrowheads. Long before Columbus came to America, the Indians hunted wild ducks on the island. Everyone was excited when Sam found an arrowhead. It was a beautiful one, and they gave it to the museum. One fine Saturday, Heather's father took her and her mother lobstering. They passed hundreds of boys. They stopped at a blue and yellow one that Heather had painted and hauled in the trap. There were 6 lobsters in it. They threw back 3, 2 tiny ones and a mother. They kept 3 big ones, plugged their claws to keep them from biting, and tossed them into a barrel. Heather's father baited the trap and put it down again. He took them back at noon and picked up his helper, Chris, and went out again. Did she like lobstering? Heather wasn't sure. Her father came home late and said they'd had a great day and a great catch. The ice crackled and melted in the pond, and the gulls were able to swim and bathe again. Frogs sang, and the wild geese honked overhead. Heather and her mother went to the cove to see 2 geese that had landed there, old tired ones, someone said, that needed rest before going on. They met some bird watchers from the mainland who carried binoculars and cameras and took lots of pictures. There were lights in the inn that night. Houses were being painted and roofs repaired. More people came, and they went about in groups, drawing and sketching, and suddenly it was June. It was warm and birds sang. Green shoots came out of the ground. Father dug a garden and Mother put up new curtains. Strangers walked along the roads and the headlands. The boat came more often, and something changed a little each day. They knew school would be closing soon, and finally the day arrived. Everyone was promoted. One day the mailboat came carrying Barbara, their friend from New York, and 2 days later Ned and Jerry arrived. People were coming to open their houses. The boat brought lots of food and other supplies, and the store stayed open longer. It was July. "What do you do here all summer?" Heather heard one of the newcomers say. They had wondered that in the winter time too, hadn't they? Island Winter by Charles E. Martin. When you live where it's really cold, a snowsuit is something you just must have. And in our next story, I think you will enjoy Thomas's Snowsuit by Robert Munch. And it's illustrated by M. Marchenko. One day, Thomas's mother bought him a nice new brown snowsuit. When Thomas saw that snowsuit, he said, "That is the ugliest thing I have ever seen in my life. If you think I'm going to wear that ugly snowsuit, you are crazy." Thomas's mother said, "We will see about that." The next day, when it was time to go to school, the mother said, "Thomas, please put on your snowsuit." And Thomas said, "No." His mother jumped up and down and said, "Thomas, put on that snowsuit." And Thomas said, "No." So Thomas's mother picked up Thomas in one hand, picked up the snowsuit in the other hand, and she tried to stick them together. They had an enormous fight, and when it was done, Thomas was in his snowsuit. Thomas went off to school and hung up his snowsuit. When it was time to go outside, all the other kids jumped into their snowsuits and ran out the door, but not Thomas. The teacher looked at Thomas and said, "Thomas, please put on your snowsuit." Thomas said, "No." The teacher jumped up and down and said, "Thomas, put on that snowsuit." And Thomas said, "No." So the teacher picked up Thomas in one hand, picked up the snowsuit in the other hand, and she tried to stick them together. They had an enormous fight, and when they were done, the teacher was wearing Thomas's snowsuit, and Thomas was wearing the teacher's dress. When the teacher saw what she was wearing, she picked up Thomas in one hand and tried to get him back into his snowsuit. They had an enormous fight. When they were done, the snowsuit and the dress were tied in a great big knot on the floor, and Thomas and the teacher were in their underclothes. Just then, the door opened and in walked the principal. The teacher said, "It's Thomas. He won't put on his snowsuit." The principal gave his very best principal look and said, "Thomas, put on your snowsuit." And Thomas said, "No." So the principal picked up Thomas in one hand, and he picked up the teacher in the other hand, and he tried to get them back into their clothes. When he was done, the principal was wearing the teacher's dress, the teacher was wearing the principal's suit, and Thomas was still in his underwear. Then from far out in the playground, someone yelled, "Thomas, come and play." Thomas ran across the room, jumped into his snowsuit, got his boots on in 2 seconds, and ran out the door. The principal looked at the teacher and said, "Hey, you have on my suit. Take it off right now." The teacher said, "Oh no, you have on my dress. You take off my dress first." Well, they argued and argued and argued, but neither one wanted to change first. Finally, Thomas came in from recess. He looked at the principal and he looked at the teacher. Thomas picked up the principal in one hand. He picked up the teacher in the other hand. They had an enormous fight, and Thomas got everybody back into their clothes. The next day, the principal quit his job and moved to Arizona, where nobody ever wears a snowsuit. Thomas's Snowsuit by Robert Munch. Our next story is The Spring Snowman. The story and illustrations are by Fusako Ishinabe. A snowman stood all alone high on a mountain. The children who had built him did not come back to play. Everything was cold and quiet. It was winter. One day the snowman heard animals running along. They were on their way down the mountain. Why? Wondered the snowman. The animals stopped to wave to the snowman. Where are you going? He asked. Down the mountain, the bear said. Spring is coming. Spring? The snowman said. What is that? The squirrel said. Spring is warm. It is not cold like winter. Spring is wonderful, the white rabbit said. The animals waved goodbye to the snowman. They went running down the mountain, and he was left alone again. The snowman was sad. What's wrong with winter? He wondered. And what is spring? Days went by, and the snowman still stood in the forest. The sun shone longer every day. The snowman felt strange. Something was happening to him. Down at the bottom of the mountain, the snow was melting. The cold days of winter were over. The white rabbit ran off by herself. All around her she saw the beautiful pink cherry blossoms. It was really spring. When the grass was green and the sun was warm, the animals started home. They stopped to pick flowers to take to the snowman. They planned to tell him about spring. But when the animals came to the place where the snowman had stood, he was gone. A little melting snow was all they saw. It was sad, but spring is not a time for snowmen. The animals went on, but they looked back and waved as if the snowman could see them. One day the white rabbit began to point to something she had found. What is it? The bear asked. A surprise, the rabbit said. The white rabbit showed the way. The animals hurried as fast as they could. What they saw made them stop. Where the snowman had stood in winter, white flowers bloomed in the sunshine. Could it be the spring snowman? maybe it was. That was the story of the Spring Snowman. Story and illustrations by Fusako Ishinabe. Another winter story that won the Caldecott Medal Award is Ezra Jack Keats's The Snowy Day. One winter morning, Peter woke up and looked out the window. Snow had fallen during the night. It covered everything as far as he could see. After breakfast, he put on his snowsuit and ran outside. The snow was piled up very high along the street to make a path for walking. Crunch, 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 his feet sank into the snow. He walked with his toes pointing out like this. He walked with his toes pointing in like that. Then he dragged his feet slowly to make tracks, and he found something sticking out of the snow that made a new track. It was a stick that was just right for smacking a snow-covered tree. Down fell the snow plop on top of Peter's head. He thought it would be fun to join the big boys in their snowball fight, but he knew he wasn't old enough, not yet. So he made a smiling snowman, and he made angels. He pretended he was a mountain climber. He climbed up a great, big, tall, heaping mountain of snow and slid all the way down. He picked up a handful of snow and another and still another. He packed it round and firm and put the snowball in his pocket for tomorrow. Then he went into his warm house. He told his mother all about his adventures while she took off his wet socks. And he thought and thought and thought about them. Before he got into bed, he looked in his pocket. His pocket was empty. The snowball wasn't there. He felt very sad. While he slept, he dreamed that the sun had melted all the snow away. But when he woke up, his dream was gone. The snow was still everywhere. New snow was falling. After breakfast, he called to his friend from across the hall, and they went out together into the deep, deep snow. Peter had a good time. The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats.